Hello and welcome to today's Opsview webinar. I'm Helen Carroll, VP of Marketing. Joining me today is the lovely Neil Colley, one of our Opsview consultants. We're going to spend the next 45 minutes taking you through BSM 2.1. Any questions, please post them in the chat facility and we'll do our best to keep 10 minutes at the end for you guys. Over to you, Neil. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. Thanks, everyone, for joining. And yes, today is 40 minutes or so into BSM. So we have recently released a large update to our BSM component. We've hugely improved the functionality, and I want to give you guys a nice tour of our new BSM. We're going to be diving into the overall purpose for BSM, what you would get out of using it, how we might configure it, and then how it integrates with other parts of Opsview. So we can use it in our dashboards, notifications, and in our reports. If there are any questions, please do use the WebEx chat and we will address them in the last 10-15 minutes or so of the session. First, a brief overview for BSM. What this gives us, and what we hope to achieve, is an enhanced, higher-level overview of our system, so we can better see the impact or the impact or the nature of a failure or an outage. So how badly that impact is going to affect your customers or your users. And BSM understands resiliency, availability, and redundancy, so we can build that intelligence into our monitoring. It also allows us to set business service-wide actions, so we can set downtime and we can acknowledge the status of certain things for our entire business service, as opposed to just services or just hosts. It gives a lot more flexibility in what we respond to, and with this, hopefully, we can increase real-time observability. We can fix things before they break. So, if we get a real-time indication of an outage, we can hopefully take some action before this causes a larger issue. And we can suppress notifications. We can keep them under control. And we can do all this because we've radically improved BSM. The view is much nicer, as I'm sure you'll agree. If anyone has used BSM in Opsview version 5 or below, you will hopefully notice a much nicer user experience and a much more refined journey through to investigating hosts and service check issues. Hugely streamlined that way. So what we do is we group our service checks and our hosts together as an overall business unit, and that's how we provide our high-level overview of the system. So a business service might be something like a company website, or applications or services specific to teams within your organization or to specific users. That's a good point to dive into the config and the view of some of our BSM. So this is an Opsview 6.4 installation, and I'm going to go to monitoring and BSM, and we can see 4 overall services that I've configured. So I've got 4 services here. I've got 1 or 2 options on this screen. I can zoom in and out. I can filter for specific statuses. So if I'm looking for criticals or otherwise, or I can sort by availability or just by name, and I can filter on impacted online, offline, or in downtime, and we'll see all of these options as we go through today's webinar. So this view uses the exact same view that you know and love from our normal Opsview Navigator. So it's the exact same data, but it's just organized in a different way to give us a better view of our critical services. And these services are made up of components, and these components rely on existing Opsview host template functionality. So if you're familiar with creating and assigning host templates to hosts, then BSM will be fairly easy for us to configure. And it's these host templates that provide the visibility for all of the checks that we're going to be running as part of our BSM. And it's the components themselves which understand the fault tolerance, which I think is a big takeaway here. It's the components that we configure that understand the fault tolerance and understand the number of systems per stack, and help us really show how bad the impact, how big the impact is. So we can see who this outage will affect, whether it's customers or business units. We can see just what, so whether it's applications or particular services that these people need. And like I say, a big thing here is we've got an indicator of how big the impact is going to be when something goes offline. And we would group our components together by function, so into pod or cluster or particular function, such as a web server. And we might want to consider BSM specific host templates. So we will see in a moment just how useful that can be. And it's these clusters that are given failure conditions. So if we have a cluster of 5 servers, we have to set a particular percentage, say 80, so that's 4 out of 5, that would need to be up and online to handle the load. And another big concept is that these components are intended to be reusable, and it's the reusability that gives us all of this visibility. So if one component is shared amongst customers and internal users, say a cloud provider or a web server provider or network connection, for example, and that goes down, we can see just who exactly is affected by that one component going offline. So we will see the effect across all of our BSM groups. So let's dig into creating and modifying a BSM group. So this is our the environment we're going to be using today. I've got some database servers, some web servers, some networking equipment, and Hyper-V server. And if it's anything like the typical environments we see customers, it's well organized, but there is a little bit of noise in here because things are breaking, things are coming up and down and going offline during the day. Inevitably, these outages happen, so I've got some critical alerts here on some of my database infrastructure. One of my web servers is apparently not behaving very well, but my networking kit's okay, my Hyper-V server's okay, and thankfully all of my backend storage is okay. We'll dig in and we'll see that I've just got these 2 criticals on my MySQL server, so they are an issue. They are something I need to be concerned about, and they have breached that critical threshold, but they're not. It's not massively urgent. It doesn't signify an overall failure. So I know that my MySQL servers are still up and running, and I can see that because I've still got 48 or so other OK service checks for this specific server. So if I dig into one of these MySQL servers, I'll see that it's running a MySQL host template. And that includes all of the checks I'm interested in. But it also, and this is where it gets fun, is it also is running a BSM MySQL host template. And that host template has a pared down list of service checks. So it only includes the critical service checks that I want to see in BSM. So if I find that host template, bear with me, this page might take a little bit of time to load. If I find that BSM host template, what you'll see is instead of the 40 odd service checks that are running for that MySQL server, we've only got 2 or 3 running for our BSM view. So I've got BSM MySQL. I can see I've got 3 service checks here. If I hover over this service check field, I can see it's assigned to 5 hosts. And if I dig in, we can see which service checks specifically I'm using. So I've got a couple specifically for BSM, and I've got one I've just robbed from the MySQL service group here. So as part of the config, sometimes it is worthwhile creating your BSM specific host template instead of using the more comprehensive host template that has the 40 odd service checks that we would otherwise see. And it's through these host templates that we can configure our BSM view. Let's go to configuration in BSM again. We can configure this view to be a lot more to provide us a lot more clarity into what each of these, the state of each of our applications. So I've got my five components here, which make up most of my business services. So I can see that I've got a component called MySQL stack. It's been assigned that specific BSM MySQL template. And I can see that I've selected automatically all 5 servers which are running this specific host template. And here's where we can set our operational zone. So this is where we can set our resiliency. So I can see I've got 3 required online, and I can have 2 failing. So that gives me an operational zone of 60%. What this means is if 2 servers fail, then this component stays online. If 3 servers fail, then it goes critical, and we consider this component failed. And I am using this component in more than one place. So I'm going to use this component in just a standard company website, but I'm also going to use it in this BSM for our marketing team. So our marketing team requires some of the data in this MySQL stack. So if this MySQL stack has any issues, they too are affected. So configuration is relatively straightforward. All I need to do is drag and drop various what we call components into our overall BSM. These components have their operational zone, so 60% for these MySQL servers, 75% for my 4 Apache servers, and I only need one of these sandboxes to be online, so I've got an operational zone of 25%. And in action, live in the flesh, BSM looks like this. So we've got our overall grid. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit to make everything slightly clearer. So a couple of things to still point out on here. Obviously, we can see the name of each particular group. We can see its status, so we can see that it's online. The eagle-eyed amongst you might have spotted availability. And this is availability in the last 24 hours. So we can see that each of my 4 BSMs have had some kind of service affecting outage in the last 24 hours. If I dig into, I'm going to focus on the company website for now, but we'll be digging in and out of all 4 of these BSMs as we go through. And if anyone's familiar with classic BSM, I think you agree that this view is a lot cleaner. We get a lot more information, and it's a lot quicker to update as well. So what we can see here is that my company website is made up of 5 stacks. Let's zoom out a bit. So I've got my Apache stack, my Hyper-V stack, MySQL, networking, and storage. And that's the exact same. 1 second. It's the exact same as we saw here on our configuration screen. And perhaps you can see on, say, on the Apache and MySQL stacks, we've got a grey divider here. So at 3, we've got a little grey divider, and at 3 again on the Apache stack, we've got a nice little grey outline, and that's the indicator of our failure condition. So here I need 60% online, or I need at least 3 of these servers to be within this grey region to consider this server, to consider this component active. Similarly, for my web server stack, I need 3 of my web servers online, because I know that for my website to function correctly, I need at least 60% of these database servers to function. Otherwise, I've got problems. We can expand our whole tree and see all of these service checks, and we can collapse each individual one. Drag and resize, get a nice view of our overall company website. I can reset my view, and I can see all 5 servers within this particular view are offline. So let's find out what happens if we have an issue. So I'm going to break my MySQL servers. So let's find out what happens if some of our MySQL servers here go offline. The update is relatively fast, so it should update within a couple of seconds. We'll see on our overview here that 3 of my BSMs have now been affected because they all use the MySQL stack. So immediately I can see that our sales system, our website, and our marketing team are all affected by 3 of these database servers going offline. And you'll also note that in real time our availability is dropping. So I can see that I've gone down. I'm below 99% on my website. My website is struggling. If I want to, I can just immediately click all problems, and this takes me directly to our problems list. I can see exactly where the issue is, right down to the specific service check. So I can see it's this DB process. My database is simply not running. And I can see, from here, I can go right to investigate. I can acknowledge it, or I can schedule downtime. So I can say, if I want to, I can acknowledge all of these database service. So I can just right click here, acknowledge, say, right, critical, yes. Tell everyone I'm working on it. I go back to my overview, my normal navigator page. What you see is it's the exact same information visible here. So I've still got my criticals. You can see that my DB listener process is now down on this particular server. But if you remember from the start of the webinar, the view hasn't changed that much. There's still a lot of criticals on here. There's still a lot of warnings. So on this view, whilst we can see everything that's going on all of our database servers, what we might not necessarily see is just how bad that impact is, which is where BSM really shines. I can see at a glance, if I find the right page, I can see at a glance from my BSM view just what's affected, how bad it is. If I dive in a little bit, I can go right the way through to the specific check that's failed. And from there, I can go investigate and see if I can't fix that check. So somebody's working on it. We can also see that I am working on this. It's been acknowledged by administrator with this comment, so we can see that someone is already working on it. And that too is indicated by the tick. The tick here indicates that it's been acknowledged, but we know that it's still down. So we've still got the big red status icons on our overview page. The engineering system is still online because, simply put, it doesn't use that MySQL stack. So this is unaffected by our current outage. So our engineering guys can happily work away. They're not affected by me tinkering. So their system remains happily in green. Let's see what happens if I pick another subset of service checks out. So we'll see that this MySQL stack will go back online relatively quickly. So everything's going to fix itself. So all of my MySQL processes are green again. But we also see that now I've got 2 Apache web servers that are struggling. So if I go back to my BSM Grid. These guys are all back online, and now I've got my website alone is offline because only my Apache stack is affected, because 2 out of 4 of my web servers are down. So I've breached that 75% threshold. I've breached my requirement, my online requirement. So my Apache stack is now considered offline. So my whole website is now considered offline. But because none of these other BSMs use that particular Apache component, so if we were to go to configuration, we'll see that only the website is using this Apache stack. So our engineering system isn't, marketing system isn't, sales isn't, and we've breached my 75% threshold because 2 servers are down. So we see just at a glance that my website is now offline, and its availability is trickling down as we speak. I can again click the all problems page, so I can see just with a few clicks what's broken, and now I can go and investigate this specific service check and find out what the problem is. You can see this one again is critical. I've got 2 criticals. Still got a few criticals for my databases, but they're not so they don't have such a big impact as web servers completely being offline. But the view is not, again, hugely different to what it was when 3 of my database servers were down. You can see that there's a critical. We can click and we can find out what's going on, but it's not so immediately obvious from our BSM as it is from our BSM view as to what is down and who is affected. I'm just going to break one Apache server so that we can see what happened when we don't quite break the threshold. So we can see that everything is now fixed and green again. And on this page, when I come back to it, what we'll see is that instead of big and red, all we have is a red outline. And this again is, I think, a nicer way of indicating a failure or impacted status rather than full failure. Just got a red outline, so I can see that one is impacted. So I know that I'm about to possibly encounter an issue. So one of my web servers is down. My website can still function, but it is impacted. It's degraded. It's not as so no need to panic just yet, but something to immediately look into. So if I don't want the rest of the stack to fall over, if I don't want customers to experience a slow website, I can investigate this in this state before even more damage occurs, before even more trouble occurs. So I'm going to do the same thing with just one of my SQL servers to give us another look at what happens when other systems are affected. And the view is updated almost immediately. So I've got my marketing and my sales system are now impacted, and we can see which specific stacks are having issues. We can also see that this doesn't affect the availability. So the availability has stopped dropping. They are considered, the overall BSM group services are considered online. The individual stacks that are in individual components that are within in here are still considered online, but the actual endpoint of the actual end server is of course considered down because our service check is down. So you can use this for reporting, and it's really useful for configuring alerts, and then when it comes to maintenance as well, because if you know that you can have 20-40% of your servers on or offline, you can perform maintenance on a number of them without affecting the overall availability and the overall uptime. Because not necessarily every single service check failing or every single outage is an indication of a failure. Sometimes it's planned maintenance, so we can set this server into. We can also schedule downtime right from here. So if we are adding maintenance, we can do that right from the BSM view as well. It's all really easy, really clear. And again, I just want to compare it to what I might call the normal Navigator view. And important to remember, these are it's the exact same data. But BSM just gives it a much clearer view. So I can see that my MySQL database stack is slightly impacted by one of these 3 MySQL servers being down. I can see the exact same info from here, but I need to know where I'm looking. I need to know, out of all of my MySQL processes, I need to know which one it is that's impacted, and I need to know how big of an impact that's going to have. You may have spotted that this is now in downtime, and that's because I scheduled the downtime right from that BSM window. So if you're familiar with scheduled downtime, you can see that I've done that right from BSM. So we've covered the config. If there are any questions on the config, I do understand there might be a few, because sometimes it's not immediately obvious how the host templates relate to the components. So I'm happy to dig into that if there are questions at the end. Just a recap of the views, we can see what happens when a stack goes offline. It goes from everything nice and green. It also, in case you may have missed it, it also goes right to the top of the list. So you can see right at the top there that from wherever it was in the hierarchy, whenever there's a problem, it floats itself to the top. So we can see front and center that there's a problem. And again, we have these views where when the website goes offline, it's gone from bottom right down here, and it's floated its way up to the left. So you can see front and center that this website is struggling. We can also use these BSM views in dashboards. So if you're familiar with configuring dashboards with an Opsview, you can just go to config and then dashboards. We can create a view which uses the classic dashboard, the classic BSM view. So I can see that these are impacted. So this exclamation point here means that these are impacted. And this view is great for having up on a screen in an office or a NOC or something, so you can just at a glance look up and see if something is impacted or if something has gone completely offline. Because if it has, you'll see a big red in our dashboard. And what's great about BSM, as well as being able to integrate it directly within your dashboards or the view, the overall view itself that you refer to at a glance, it's great. You can integrate this with your notifications too, so you can create notification profiles specifically for specific BSM services. So instead of being notified about every single host or service check going down, you can create a notification profile to alert me when my website is simply impacted and when it's completely offline. So maybe we've got different audiences for these two events. So maybe I don't need to. So MySQL admins or database admins can be told about all of these issues, and then a different set of users can be told about the MySQL stack going offline. And again, a different set of users can be told about the website when this Apache stack is impacted. And that's a really powerful tool, so that you don't wake up the wrong people, or you don't escalate issues incorrectly, or you don't set off fire alarms when there's no need. When there is a need, when your company website is down or your sales system is offline, you can create that notification profile and alert the right people. So maybe in this case, we'll do it via email, via push, via Slack, via everything, to make sure that if the website is offline, someone some admin or some group is going to get woken up at the right point to be able to look into it. So that can be very, very useful as well. We can use it as a kind of escalation tool, escalation notification method to make sure that a larger team gets pulled into a larger outage instead of one or two systems are impacted. And we can also, ultimately, we can report on these as well. So I know reporting is important for a lot of organizations. So at the end of the month or the end of the week, you need to report on how resilient your website was, how its uptime, and who is impacted. So we can do that using a lot of the built-in Opsview reports. So for BSM, we've got detailed SLA report, summary, and just an overall SLA report. We can generate these. I did this just about an hour ago because sometimes generating the report takes a little bit of time. But we can create a PDF of how available our individual components were on each individual day, and we can see that back on the 9th of November, this Apache stack was unavailable for a little bit of time, but for the rest of the time, everything seemed to be okay. We've got the same overall summary report, so I can see that my target on that day was 99.99%, but I actually achieved 99.8%. And you can see just how much downtime there was here. So this was failed for 1 minute and 36 seconds overall. And you get that good information out of BSM. And again, a similar report, but for the whole month. Really easy to generate. You just use the built-in tools, the built-in reports that come with Opsview. It's just a case of firing up the report and picking the component or the website, the component or the BSM that you're interested in. You pick your date range and when you want the report to run from. So the week up to the 15th. And I just hit OK for this to pull their data out of Opsview and into a nice, easily viewable report. And with this one, I actually get service check data as well, and what caused the outage. So if you do go to the effort of configuring BSM, you can use it in multiple places within Opsview, and you can get some excellent information out of Opsview. So after that, it's possible that you're thinking how to get started with BSM, because you need to know your environment, but you also need to know how to configure Opsview. So as we'll be monitoring these critical business services or overall customer estates, it may be useful to get those first few BSM views created for you. So we have a services package where a friendly Opsview consultant will review your environment and work hand in hand to build up that first creation, that first usage of BSM, and again how to maintain it as well. It goes into a lot of detail, that package. So if you are interested and you think that there's a lot of work in getting that first one or two created, we can certainly help you out. Okay, on that note, I'm just a minute over. So Helen, over to you, please.
Hey, thank you, Neil. You sound very croaky, all that talking.
Sorry.
No worries. A few questions have come in. The first one, if you schedule downtime from BSM View, will that scheduled downtime and all the service checks assigned to the host, or just the service check that's part of BSM?
Just the service check that's part of BSM. So let me get to the correct view here. Yeah, just the service check that's part of BSM. So I think I've still got my downtime scheduled, and we can see that it's just for the service check that's in BSM. If you want it set for the whole host, you can, or the whole all services, but it would only be the ones that are in BSM that you would do it. But they would pick up that downtime.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Neil. I was very happy that you got the marketing website back up and running for me.
Otherwise, you've got no work to do.
Absolutely. Just a point of clarification for me. So this new BSM View, what product version is this available in?
So this arrived in the 6.4 branch. So anyone on 6.3 and below will not be able to view this nice new BSM 2.1, the more responsive version. They'll have the older, what we call classic BSM, which we'd need to upgrade to 6.4 to be able to take advantage of this.
Okay, great. And I know there were some email communications that were sent out today with more information around BSM, links to upgrade videos, more information on that BSM Jumpstart pack, and an initial offer if you buy the BSM Jumpstart pack, then we'll provide you with the upgrade for free as well. So one of our consultants, like Neil, will perform that upgrade for you when you buy a BSM Jumpstart pack.
Yeah, and the upgrade from 6, so for those of you who might have struggled through an upgrade from 5 to 6 on your own, the upgrade from various versions of 6 to 6.4 is a lot more straightforward and a lot less time consuming than perhaps a 5 to 6 upgrade was, because there's not a huge architecture change involved.
And talking of upgrades, Neil, you're running a couple more webinars next week on how to upgrade from versions 5 and version 6.
I am indeed. So we've got another 45-minute session or so for each one on how to upgrade from a 5 environment and a 6 environment, which will be fun.
Perfect. And we'll be recording those as well. So if you're not able to join us next week, I know it's getting close to kind of Thanksgiving holiday. So out of the office and or the virtual office rather, enjoying the celebrations for Thanksgiving, we'll record those for you and we'll share them after the webinars. I don't think there are any more questions, Neil. So thank you for your time, much appreciated. Thank you to everyone that's joined us today. We will share the recorded webinar from today with you. If you don't receive it, please have a look in your spam box. We know that quite a few of our emails are getting caught up in spam. So check the spam folder and hopefully you'll find our communications in there. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day, good evening. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks everyone.